This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay, and it's a week before Test Week. Welcome to Harry Jones. Hello, mate. How you doing?
How's it, Laidlaw? Our listeners may remember from years back, I always compared you to Greg Laidlaw. And it's test footy, and it's time to get serious. Let's get serious about our 89er team. I'll just go through really quickly. This is our team
How's
currently. It looking? Insha, Jackman at hooker. Sir Bill Beaumont at tight head prop because we wanted to save scrums, and he's been kind of anti-scrum.
So you've thrown him straight up front.
I shifted the big man into prop. I wanted to make him feel the pain. Salakaya Loto, Raiwaloi, a wonderful second row. Hannigan, myself, and Harry, the other Harry, as our loose trio. I'll try to stay out of the way. You at 9, Tuamua at 10. We've got a really good midfield of Horan and MMA Foot, Kevin Foot. Sticking him there at outside center. He could do the job. He tackles well.
We could have a potential 13 option next week too.
Yeah,
a very good 13 option next week.
Yes, we got a serious imbalance on our wings. We have Kellaway on one and we have Atco on the other. So it's a light tackling left winger. And then there's a guy for fullback that's going to be on our pod today.
Yeah, he could slot in. We'll ask him about how he thinks about playing fullback for our side, but that'll be fine. It'll be fine. It is episode 20 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast, and thanks so much for making us part of your rugby week. So, mate, let's whip it out down the short side for another week with cheers and jeers from the weekend. And I'll start with a good old-fashioned cheers to the Glasgow Warriors. And we will get into the IRC and the Super Rugby finals later in the episode. But the way Glasgow wrestled momentum off the Bulls after half an hour of domination at Loftus to score just before halftime, and then they built their own momentum into the second half, and they shut out 50,000 people at Loftus Versfeld, and it was an incredible performance. And it is no wonder that Mark Palmer in the Times described their 21-16 win over the Bulls as, quote, the single most impressive feat from a Scottish team in the entire professional era. Now, I mean, rugby journos don't mind a bit of hyperbole, but that is spot on, isn't it?
You pronounce hyperbole like you do.
Yeah, no, I buggered it up 3 times.
Pacific Islander names where you get really slow and you do every syllable exactly
each one
right.
Yes. Hyperbole, of course.
That could also be the Scottish sport has not experienced many highs as a team in teams. However, I will say this:
they were so good. They were so good.
They did a remarkable job of finding the awkward. So they found the few parts of the Bulls game that were off. They attacked the strengths. Franco Smith, who's been rumored as a next Bok coach, was really good at finding those little wrinkles and creases in the Bulls game and put them to the sword. My jeer is very related to your cheer. Once upon a time, I was playing gridiron as a foreigner and someone who has a need, kind of depraved need to be a performer and make everyone laugh. I was entered into a pancake eating contest the night before the game, which was against the Lumberjacks, and it was Axe the Jacks with the Flapjacks. And it was how many pancakes can you eat in 5 minutes? And you could shove it down your mouth however you wanted, but you had to douse it with syrup. That was your only lubricant to go down. And out of like 50 people eating pancakes, I came second. And it was the final second of that 5-minute period. I saw my competitor swallow, and I was still pouring down the syrup. The pain I felt exceeded the pain of falling off a building, having my tongue ripped out in Pretoria a year ago. Any number. I've broken my nose 3 times. All my fingers have been broken except my thumb.
Yeah,
the pain of coming second in a pancake eating contest is the worst. Jake White, when you've lost at home in the IRC and it's painful, don't go in a press conference and start shooting these ridiculous conspiracy theories about how
referees and away teams.
What is this? Stop it.
Yeah.
Just say, well done, and then sleep on it, come out and say, oh, maybe we missed 40 tackles.
Yeah.
Maybe on our drive to the line at the end, Akar van der Merwe could have peeled off and run over the 9, and they would have scored and won. So stop it, Jake, please.
Just take the L.
Eat your pancakes.
In the press conference, just take the L, I think. Yeah, that's fair.
That's my pancake parable.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I'm tempted to offer a bonus cheers to the Leicester Tigers, but we might cover off on that a bit later as well.
Ooh, spicy.
I am looking forward to this week's guest, though, mate. A name that might be familiar to Australian ears, and a name who has gone on to become an absolute stalwart of Major League Rugby in the US. He's up next. He's up right now, in fact. This week's guest has been on a hell of a rugby journey, starting from the Brumbies Academy to stints with the Queanbeyan Whites in the eastern suburbs in Sydney. Had a couple of seasons with Blackheath in England, the oldest rugby club, one of the oldest rugby clubs in existence. He then enjoyed strong showings with the New South Wales Country Eagles in the first season of the NRC, used that as a springboard for a couple of seasons with Ulster, and from there headed stateside to join the goddamn Houston Sabercats in the inaugural season of Major League Rugby. He's had a stint with Rugby New York, and he's currently riding high with the Seattle Seawolves. Please welcome the leading point scorer in Major League Rugby history, Bungendor's own Sam Windsor. Hello, mate. Welcome along.
Oh, good. Thank you, guys. Thanks for
what an intro, Sam.
What an intro, mate. Took up half the show.
That's a hell of an intro, that one.
But I know your whole life now.
Well, we don't need to talk about it anymore. We're good.
No, we don't. I kind of got into it, I'll admit, because when I sort of started pegging together, and I knew a good number of those stepping stones, but then I was like, oh, no, you did get to England for a couple of years. And then I actually forgot about the Ulster stint as well. So It's been a hell of a journey.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to put it, I would guess. England, for me, I think was probably the one point in my career that probably led to everything else. Frustrated with my opportunities in Australia, and my older brother, Rich, who after 16 years made his comeback for Queanbeyan Whites at the weekend, mighty fourth grade at the White Day. So shout out to Rich for making it back. His ribs are pretty sore, he reckons. But England for me was the point in my career, I think, that kind of opened my eyes to the world of rugby and the possibilities that probably lay ahead of me. So played for Blackheath, and then oldest open rugby club, and then actually a few games for Dublin University or Trinity Rugby Club, who is actually, I think, the oldest rugby club. They're a college team. So
right.
Little trivia there for anyone listening.
Factoid there. So you've hit some history.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the goddamn Houston Sabercats are not the oldest team in North America.
That is true.
Hey, Sam, did you have any other career track as a youngster, just looking at the world, or were you always thinking of professional sport?
Probably always thinking of professional sport, actually. I love cricket. So coming through school at Eddie's in Canberra, summer was cricket. So captain first 11 and the first 15, and played a bit of cricket in my final year at school. I think rugby was always the draw for me. It was always something that I wanted to be good at, and I wanted to, I guess, excel at. So that was always for me where things lay. And then in terms of career paths, I probably never really put my foot down on anything else that I was super passionate about, like I was my footy. So coffee for me has always been a big part of my life, and working in a coffee shop from a young age. So that dream is probably still alive, about owning a coffee shop on the beach somewhere, and opening flat whites to the punters is probably going to be the next step once this dream's over.
We'll hook you up with Matt To'omua, mate. You can branch out into his franchise world.
Perfect. I mean, he's probably got a couple of little restaurants for me that I can probably take over and jump back on the baskets. Start whipping out some espressos.
Weren't you roommates with Matt once upon a time?
I don't know where that bit of info came from or where you found that, but that's unbelievable. That's 2009, actually. No, sorry, a little bit. Yeah, 2009, eastern suburbs. Left Canberra, went up to Sydney to play for Easts. My dad played for East and North, so I was actually torn between which club to play for, but eventually landed at East. 15-year reunion of our second grade grand final this year, so the boys are prepping for a big back to East Day next weekend, or this weekend, pardon. But Matty came up in between stints with the Stormers in the Currie Cup. He came and lived with me.
That's right.
And Tyler Gray, who's actually forged an unbelievable career in France. We had a little place at the top of Coogee Bay Road in Randwick, and it was almost the spare room in my place. Actually, Dan Pencil was the first one there, another Queanbeyan legend. He went back to Canberra, and then Huey Edmonds had a stint there. So Huey was playing hooker.
Oh, wow.
At the time, he would come up and what was I, 22? So I was, so 22. And that was sort of my first experience of Huey, who's, again, a bit older than me. Not, you won't probably like to admit it, but I learned a few things off Huey off the field as well as on the field that year. But Matty's got the back end of the season in the place there. So cool.
That's right. He did play about half a season for the East. That's right. I remember him going to we spoke to him last year about his Curry Cup stint, I think, Harry, from memory.
Yeah. No, I pieced it all together. Who was your worst roommate in all the years of rugby? Just come clean. Who's a snorer? Who's the joke?
That's a good one. Actually, I'm living with a guy at the moment who is Manate McKay. He's probably awake now because his room's just next door to this, and it's quite early in the morning here in Seattle. So I've actually borrowed his ring light, hence the lighting here. But he's quite
very
active
good
on social media. He's got a TikTok and a YouTube and a decent Instagram following. So Manate is actually quite an enjoyable roommate to have. There's always something going on, whether he's playing video games or filming a new reel. He keeps life interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. At which point did this thing called Major League Rugby pop up on your radar, Sam? And was it the perfect example of the great rugby unknown at the time?
I think it was. It was so a coach I had at Blackheath, Mike Friday, long-term sevens coach for the Eagles. He was in America, and pro rugby had just been and gone. So that was 2017, 16 even. And did some investigation, some research, reached out to Mike, and pro had kind of fallen on its head. But rugby, I think professional rugby in America was destined to about to take back off. So whether it was pro or another entity, that was probably an educated gamble to come out to the States. My wife, Becca, American, I met a rugby tour with Blackheath. She'd been to Belfast with me, came back to America, and I wasn't really enjoying my footy in the States. I wasn't, sorry, in Europe, wasn't playing as much rugby as I wanted to. So I thought, you know what, time to make a change and came out here. So whether MLR had started or not, I don't know what I would have done. I'd probably had plans to maybe go back to Australia, but fortunately things kind of aligned and was fortunate enough to be here when it all kicked off and got in at the ground floor. And I've been lucky to see it grow and thrive and drop and grow. And now we're now year 7. And I think we're in a pretty steady ascent into what we can get to.
It's pretty cool if you end up staying, the top as a point scorer forever. Like you can imagine a scenario where because of the permutations of team introductions and whatever rules changes comes next, that Sam Windsor is forever the top scorer. But I was thinking about that whole story you just said and wondering about this. I just heard someone say, and I don't know if it's right or not, but 300 coaching jobs available in France between Pro D2 and top 14. So those are just jobs. Like people have to go get a job and work somewhere in rugby. And so now with MLR opening up these clubs and having, some pretty decent budgets and people coming to work, it's just so crucial to be able to go and ply your trade. The Australian problem right now is if things are shrinking back, people just have to go get a job somewhere. And then that relationship with that player ends up pulling that person there, like you're talking about. And, you wake up one day and it's just difficult to keep the boys at home. You look at a Aussies abroad team right now, it's pretty decent.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think? So how does Australia sort of get back into the game of having, like 3 or 4 clubs in Sydney that are either pro or semi-pro or something where you can keep guys at home?
I was probably disappointed and frustrated that after the inaugural year of the NRC, I thought I had a pretty good season. Probably wasn't expected to play a lot of footy at the start of the NRC. Came back from a little stint at Leinster, back up with PC at East. Got in the Country Eagles team, had a really good year, and then probably Jack Debrasini was the guy that probably picked me for a spot at the Rebels. I think it probably was that year. Brumbies were pretty established, and Rebels were kind of in a rebuilding stage. And Jack had an unbelievable year with the Rebel team. But that NRC competition, I think, for Australia was when I think the future was brightest in terms of there was that visible or that tangible stepping stone for guys to go from Shoot Shield or GPS competition or the Canberra comp to really put themselves on the map and prove that they can play at that next level. And they haven't had that for a few years. And club footy's tried to, work its way in as that middle ground for guys to prove themselves to be, able to play professional rugby. And they haven't had that. And now the opportunities, like you talk about, all these coaching gigs overseas, there's now all these playing jobs overseas for guys who are coming out of high school, Japan or France, see these young 20-year-olds and go, okay, well, let's invest 3 or 5 years to them and they can play for our national team. That's a little more attractive to guys that are waiting in the wings, for what is now 4 professional teams in Australia. And now MLR's, again, providing another avenue for these guys to go play professional rugby, experience different cultures, go to America, the big bright lights, experience some unbelievable cities, and just give them probably what Australia can't give them, which is that professional exposure at a young age, and more game time. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what everyone wants is more game time. And if you're not getting good minutes or quality minutes, you're not really going to improve, and you're not really going to enjoy the game as much as you can.
And it's probably it's probably an easier choice too, Harry, to go. Whereas 5 years ago, maybe when the NRC first became a COVID casualty, there were plenty of young guys who thought, well, maybe I'll go to Japan. Even if I'm playing a Division 2 or Division 3 club, it's professional rugby, I can get a go. But now they can go to the States and earn probably similar money, and they speak the language already. They know, a fair amount of the culture. It would be a hell of a lot easier for them to just get on with the job of playing rugby in the US than it would be in France or Japan or wherever. So it's probably an easy choice now, and that's why we're seeing so many young Australian guys going over there.
No, it's a good point. Sam, what's the vibe like in Seattle? I would imagine it's a very good sports town in general. I mean, everyone who plays there in other sports says the same thing. Is it kind of fun to be around? Like you can be about as famous as you want to be, right? You can walk anywhere and no one really goes crazy. But at the same time, I would imagine the rugby fans there are pretty deeply invested.
Yeah, the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, probably one of the stronger rugby fraternities in the States. Long history of rugby in this side of the country. So Seattle, obviously a year 1 team with MLR, 2-time champions, first and second years, and then COVID sort of disrupted their the three-peat, if you like, but I don't think they were in that third year. But we had 3,300 people at our game on Saturday, and that was probably the biggest of the season, but averaging 2,500 probably every game sort of proves that Seattle is an established rugby town with a good fan base. But talk about walk around town and you're not bothered and you're not noticed anywhere, because I would say that it's still 1 in 10, 1 in 20, 1 in 30 people know about rugby here, and the other 29 and 99% are still unawares that there's professional rugby even in America. So as a whole, that's my biggest, I guess, well, that's the biggest hurdle that rugby needs to get over here in the States is just being on the map and being noticeable, being known, and being a sport that people are familiar with. Yeah.
What's life in Major League Rugby for the average player? Like where's the average salary up to? Like, can players make a decent living over there now?
I think it depends who you ask. There's guys who come to the States not as mercenaries, but come out for a season and then go back. So the season runs, pre-season starts in January, and January. So this year was February through the final is going to be early August. So it used to be all done by the end of June. So you could come out and play. You could go play NPC, or you can go back and finish the club season. Some guys would go back to Japan and play the start of their season, so they'd miss all the pre-season in Japan. So it would almost make a 12-month season if you had two jobs. I don't think if you're playing by the letters of the law, it's probably you're not gonna make enough to just play MLR and then have 5 months off and travel around the States or go back. Some guys can, and I guess you'd have to probably dive a little deeper into their books to see how that's possible. But because it's still owned and ran by the owners and each team, they can't open up the salary cap, open up the spending. Some teams couldn't keep with the others, so you'd probably have a bit of a lopsided competition. So visa constraints obviously then prevent guys from earning money out of the game. If you want to get a casual part-time job in the off season, you need to have a visa that allows you to do that. So that's why guys will probably go home and pick back up some work, or they can pick up a club footy gig and then come back. But I think we're on the path to it being a legitimate, long-term, season-long, 12-month-long career. But at the moment, from year 1 to year 7, we're definitely heading in the right direction, and guys are being able to establish themselves and put down roots in the States just to kind of commit to MLR teams.
Yeah, what I think is really important about MLR, and they're being very strict about it, is they're not letting teams go on and on in financial distress. You saw what happened with England. In England, that happened. It's horrible. It's just horrible to watch, actually, when you have 200 people suddenly out of work. Yeah. So I think it's really interesting that they're doing that, and they're taking the heat to do it. But then now the teams that are there are solid balance sheets. I was struck when I hung out with you guys at a coffee shop here in Texas at probably not another league in the world that has so much diversity from country to country. Mm-hmm. So you have the South Africa contingent, you have the Poms, you have the Aussies, you have the Kiwis, you have Tongans, Pacific Islanders of all stripes. You have from everywhere. And it just seems like you're able to make that mix work. And then I've been around Houston, I've been around Dallas, I've been around the Legion. Same thing. I mean, it's really amazing. I'm really having a hard time thinking of a league that has that much mixture of countries, and then also the local guys. How does that work?
It's a good question.
How do you make that all mesh? Because team cohesion is such the big thing,
I think it's funny. We might get onto him a little bit later, but I think Mac described himself as the glue that keeps everything together, and that's I think that's the role of the foreigners coming in. So we take all those different cultures and all those different learnings we've had from back home, and whether it's Australia or, like you talk about, New Zealand, South Africa, or the Pacific nations, and then use that as, I guess, the icebreaker to bring kind of the American sports model together, because it's very different in its own right. It's very, it's very Hollywood, if you like, big bright lights and Yahoo, and rugby's quite a humble sport, and we kind of like, okay, well, you can't carry on that here because you're going to get, embarrassed by your teammates for, behaving like that. Whereas, boys are quick to chop guys down if they're behaving too outlandishly. Whereas, so what I've loved here, we've got a good contingent of foreigners from all over the world, and that's the beauty of footy, I guess. The beauty of rugby is it doesn't matter where you're from. You're going to be welcomed. You're going to have a good time. You might cop a bit of stick at the start, but at the end of the day, you're going to be welcomed with open arms, and we use that to kind of build the culture of the team. So one of our players, Pungo Aini, who I've had the pleasure of playing with at 3 different teams, he was one of our first guys in Houston. He's a big part of the culture we've got here, and he makes boring meetings or those long training days all the more fun just with just a bit of culture that he brings, and that's his Samoan heritage coming through, and his ability to entertain a crowd, and that's just the beauty of footy. I think it's
the global language of rugby, isn't it?
Yeah. Speaking of Mac Mason, the flyhalf that plays like a prop. I was looking at his kicking action, Sam, and I think his off arm, I think he needs to throw it out longer and balance himself. Yeah. He's a little tight. I think he's going to shank that every now and then.
You are giving kicking advice, and we have literally got the leading point scorer in MLR history.
He knows what I mean. He's too tight. He needs to open up.
So I think Mac would have come into, and I played at East as well, actually. So he's kind of lived in my shadow for a while. We can kind of call it, if you like. We have a good little competitive relationship going with our kicking. And he only asked me this week. Actually, he's like, who taught you to kick? He asked me, and I was like, to be honest, mate, no one. I've just kind of learned on my own and worked it out, because he saw the way I lined up my goal shots, and I'm a little too tight, like to try and draw the ball around. And he's like, no, I got taught, just kick it straight. But it's quite interesting. He's been a guy to play with, and this is his second team in the MLR, and he's obviously kicking at a high percentage. So maybe that percentage can be even higher. Harry, tell him to kind of bring that rodeo arm in and make sure he's a little bit. I'd like to say he needs to stay taller over the ball, but for a short bloke, it's probably not the nicest thing to say if he needs to be a bit taller.
Yeah, he's a bit height challenged. But no, it'll be fine on the short kicks. It's the long kicks I worry about with that action. I remember seeing one time the All Blacks warm up. I was in New Zealand watching it, and I swear that all the kickers in the All Blacks they were gambling. Like before the game, they were taking weird kicks. Like, let's take a drop kick from the try line, try to hit the poles.
Yeah,
that
right.
And you could tell they had money on it.
Yeah.
And it was like Bowden was more into that than he was doing prep for the game. Do you guys ever do that kind of thing in practice or before games?
We do. So I think it's only cost me maybe a 6-pack with Mac, but the biggest gambler with kicking is actually Chris Latham. So Latho's our assistant coach here. Obviously legend of Aussie rugby, and he is the most accurate drop punt out of anyone I've ever seen.
Really?
And,
Yeah.
So he'll come out and kick with us, and we'll always have a little gamble on coffees on who can put it on the 5 meter line in terms of penalty kicks at the end of training.
That's so good.
So
to
he's
lose.
probably, I think he's undefeated at that. But we asked him, like, how did you get so good or accurate at kicking? So pre-game or during training, he'll stand under the post and he'll kick the ball back to us as we're kicking goals. Which, for those that are goal kickers in rugby, know how annoying it is if you've got to go to the ball every time you kick it. It gets a bit monotonous. But when he was a junior or young kid coming into the red setup, I don't want to give his age away there, but that's probably early 90s for Latho.
Would be.
He used to stand under the post and retrieve the balls from Eels. So Eels, he's kicking goals, and he was that worried or scared that he was going to spray the balls for his captain that he was like, I just got to kick it straight, got to get it to him. So taught himself to kick straight and accurate because he didn't want to upset the king and make him have to walk around and fetch balls while he was kicking goals. So
that's
really fortunate to have Latho here to kind of keep us grounded and also help us fetch balls.
There's a lesson for you, kids. If you want to be really accurate kicker, find something to fear.
Fear is 100%. The best motivator. Fear is the best motivator, or desire for revenge. Yeah. So in the West of the MLR, obviously it's divided into West and East. Houston's been really tough all year. They dropped one to the Legion, I think, this weekend, which opens up Sunday. A little bit for you. How do you see the West shaping up? Do you have a shot at going number one, or has Houston pretty much got that?
Yeah, no, Houston locked down the top seed, I think, with a win against us 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
So it was, again, nice to see them not, completely disregard the game against the Legion at the weekend. San Diego still had a lot to play for. The bonus point win we had at the weekend put us 10 points ahead of San Diego before their game. So that one but locked us in for a home playoff. So we're second place in the West with a game against San Diego this week. So the way it's actually ended up is I think we'll probably play San Diego in the 2 versus 3. Houston will play Dallas in the 1 versus 4, but we actually play each other in the last round coming up this weekend. So a little interesting. We're back-to-back games against the same opposition, but there is a little international break in between there. So the West has been super competitive. Dallas, had their ups and downs at the start of their tenure, or I guess their life in the MLR, but they've come alive and proven that they can mix it with the top teams. And then San Diego has got an unbelievable squad and the history to kind of prove that they're going to be competitive. So pains me to see Houston going on an 8 or 9 win streak, considering that was about total games we won when I was there for 4 years. But they've invested heavily in the rugby side of things over the last couple of years. So it was only a matter of time before they had some success, and the crowd there and what the ownership have done over the last 7 years, it's kind of nice to see them having some success and giving the fans something to cheer about.
What did you make of the Jackals Maul at the start of the year, Sam?
The boys are going to hear this, I think, and they'll probably won't. We forwards, where you play, but there's always a bet at the start of the season. If you don't give a Maul try away, there'll be a steak dinner or a night out or something that the forwards coach will provide. And they hadn't conceded any up until that first game against Dallas, and then the Volkotzer scores 5 tries in all rolling Mauls, so that went out the window early doors. But yeah, I mean, that's a hell of a weapon to have, and on a short field like we've got, actually, it's if you've got a good kicker, you can more or less set them all up from 80 meters out if you've got a good kicker, because it's quite easy to put it into the 22. So I think it's probably. You ask a couple of boys in our team, they want to outlaw, mauls in the 22, which I think would be a pretty good rule for the MLR to maybe introduce in the coming years.
Well, you've killed off conversions from in front, so why not do something like that?
I do have that on my notes here, actually. If there was going to be a question about, what do I like and dislike about the MLR?
Oh no, I know about the dislike.
Those 7-point tries absolutely break me. I'd be a good 10 years ahead of anyone if I was allowed to kick those 2-pointers. But
they should let you let you have credit for it anyway. Like, you designate who was the conversion, and you still get the 2.
Boys still think that's thing. Boys don't understand they get the 7 points if they score under the post. So boys like, is that 7 points? Yeah, you get the 7. I don't get the 2 just for you scoring in between. So you see guys score next to the point, the post there, not just to give the kickers the 2 points, but to give the forwards a little bit of a breather. So
any truth in the rumor that that there's someone's running away from a try and there's 13 teammates going, go in, and you're standing there going, go out, get out, get outside the lines. Yeah.
There's a video of Carlos Spencer, I think from mid 2000s, early 2000s, Blues versus Hurricanes maybe, and I think that he would have been playing for the Blues. Hurricanes needed a losing bonus point to go through the playoffs, and he ran in and then ran out and scored right in the corner, and then obviously nailed the kick from the sideline, which was unbelievable. But for anyone that's into that kind of stuff, look it up. Carlos Spencer.
Yeah, speaking of Kings, so when you smash Matt Giteau in the tackle against San Diego, what I want you to do is say, "That's the Windsor law," or "Windsor's been making laws longer than Giteau's," or "Giteau law abolished."
Right. He only played half a game yesterday. He took a nasty knock in the back in the first half. Played on, fair play to him. Did look like he milked the penalty a little bit of it, so I'm sure I'll remind him about that. But Gitz was my under 13s coach at Eddie. So his young brother was in my year at school. He was in year 12 when I was in year 7. So we actually go back a while, me and Gitz.
Right.
And
there you go.
2021 came out, played for the Giltinis, and I think there was 3 or 4 Eddie's boys on the field in that game in Houston. So it's awesome to see him back. Obviously, an unbelievable athlete, and he's still passionate and driven enough to go out there and play footy. So hopefully he's on the field next week. If not, definitely.
And he has a mohawk too.
Yeah,
he's got to let that go. I think I don't know what he's doing there. I'll have to stick. Yeah, he wears a headgear, so I guess he hides it a little bit.
There's a good break there. There is a good break there.
Music.
Yeah, music there. One round of Major League Rugby before your playoffs and things. You mentioned before, it sort of feels like Houston's really set up from there. Does it feel like it's their title to lose from here? They've been the dominant side all year.
I don't know. It's something about it. I'm not, without shooting myself in the foot. They're a very well drilled side, and a side that takes their opportunities probably better than most. Not much on paper that probably scares any of the teams. It's a really well drilled and maybe cohesive team. Heineke Meyer, the head coach, Pote, or director of rugby, and then Pote Hugh, and the South African influence on their game is pretty evident, just in terms of playing field position, turning possession over under control. So they'll kick the ball from anywhere up to 60, 0 to 60 meters, and then just force teams to make mistakes and build pressure that way. So I think if you can keep the ball on the field and hold the ball in their half, I think that's the way they're kind of breaking down. And just staying disciplined. They've got, Davy Kotzer or AJ Alatimu who don't miss many kicks. So the cleanest team and that can ball against them will prove to be the team that probably comes out on top. And San Diego showed that yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. The finals format, obviously you have your playoffs in your conferences. At which point do you start crossing over? Like, could you guys play Houston in the final?
No, so it's East versus West, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and then the winners that playoff for the conference final. So probably your more traditional model.
Go through,
and then the 2 winners. Yeah, so America loves to build up conferences so you can you get a trophy for winning your conference, and then you got to try and play for the main shield. So
It's like the NBA.
It's an interesting one.
It's like the NBA, and what happens is sometimes the West or the East could be way ahead of the other one. So the sixth place one in the West could be, would have been second in the East. But they do that to keep fan bases alive because of the large geography. So you don't want to have a situation where one conference goes moribund and then no one cares about it in New England.
Yeah. Well, you have an Australia-New Zealand situation with Super Rugby.
Yeah.
That's
exactly what we're at.
But unlike the other sports, we get to play everyone every year. You've got teams in the NFL that might not see each other for 6, 7, 10, 12 seasons, which is interesting.
Yeah, true.
You build those natural rivalries, and obviously you want, your conference rivals are always there, but some teams just don't get along. So it's always nice if they're one-off games, but you'd always like to play them a few more times.
What's Seattle's big challenge from here?
Our biggest challenge will probably be staying here. We've had unbelievable bad run of injuries this year, and it's people look at the MLR, I think, that aren't too familiar with it and think, it's easy. You only play 16 games a year. It's half a year. It's not that tough. I'll go out there and it's going to be easy. But it's actually a really physical and attritional league. The nature of the season is so short that you're kind of forced to turn out every week and play a high quality game of footy. And turf fields, I think, come into play a little bit. We play a lot of games on turf. You train on turf.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
So if we can get our big players back for playoff games, I don't think there's many teams that can get in our way. So if our set piece is firing the way it can, our backline is one of the most elite and electric backlines I've ever been a part of. So if we can all stay healthy and stay on the field, I think it's just continuing to do what we did at the start of the year, which was just execute set piece into launch plays. Teams will probably struggle to break us down. But again, hopefully everyone can get fit and get back on the field, and that puts us in a position to win our first playoff game, and then we've got to go down to Houston if they win theirs and try and beat them down there in Texas in July, which proves another difficulty itself. And get to the final.
So I know you, Sam. I know you watch a lot of other footy around the world. This weekend was one of the best weekends of rugby in a long time. Might have been the best weekend of rugby after the Six Nations, maybe, because I rate some of these games better than the one in the Champions Cup. Did you get to watch the almighty Blues, who I've rated the second best club team in the world, just sweep the Chiefs aside? That was just a thumping, wasn't it?
It was I was actually a chat with Kells last week talking about home field advantage not really being a thing because Eden Park is the mecca of rugby in New Zealand, and they were unstoppable. Weather wasn't obviously great, but I think the one thing that scares me as a rugby player is when a winger like Caleb Clark is coming downhill at a rate of knots off the side of a ruck, and no chance at stopping him. So I think from the kickoff to the final whistle, the Blues never looked like losing that game.
It's beautiful to watch a team that's that good and been good all season, and then they put together their best game for the most important game. It's something lovely about it to watch that. I mean, Vern Carter had those guys, and Vern Carter, I think the score was 17-0, and I posted one on social media of him looking glaring, like he hated it. I was like, that's a coach.
He was coaching a team who was currently being beaten by 30 points. Yeah,
it was a remarkable stat posted by our friend Jeff Parks, which said that the Blues spent 42% of the match inside the
Chiefs 22.
That's ridiculous. Wow. How do you? There's no way to get out of that because they're such good ball carriers that if you're there for 5 tries is what happens.
Yeah, and as a defensive team, if you're spending that long on your try line defending, you're going to be gassed by halftime. And rugby doesn't allow time to. I mean, the MLR does because we have these water breaks, 20 and 60 minutes, but doesn't give you a chance to recover and then launch your own attack. So dominant performance from the Blues, and I didn't realise it was so long between drinks for them for championships. So always nice.
Yeah, everyone's sort of saying the COVID years don't count. So they won the Super Rugby Trans-Tasman comp the one year of that in 2021, beat the Highlanders, I think. And it's funny that those COVID championships have just been erased from memories because it's curious. Yet curiously even more, the Crusaders one still counts in their 7 straight. So anyway, work that out.
Yeah.
The thing that struck me about this game was that I still can't, a couple of days later, can't really think of anything that Chiefs could have done better. Like, I didn't think they actually played that badly, but they got done by 30 points in a final.
Well, they had to win more rucks away. So the Blues only lost 2 rucks. You know, when you build that many rucks, there's 253 tackle attempts. So I think you would have said the loose forwards had to somehow get in there or over the ball. Someone, the midfielder, someone had to just almost push the law. Like, you're going to lose anyway, meekly. Push it, you know, like do something. I think that was the only way. But you're right. If everyone played their best, the Blues were going to win.
It felt like it. And I didn't mind the suggestion that came out. And I actually think Paul Cully wrote it, that it kind of puts the Brumbies' loss in the semi-final into perspective, because when there was only 12 points, wasn't it? Small mercies.
But it's look at the way teams start games, and I'll refer to us in Seattle. We've had a couple of games where we start slow and then we're forced to kind of claw a game back at the end of the game, which isn't ideal, because you put yourselves under that unbelievable pressure. Whereas Brumbies went into halftime probably going, what do we do? How are we gonna dig our ways out of that? And they, fortunately they managed to salvage something out of that game. Whereas the team that can sustain that pressure and sustain that level of accuracy, for 80 minutes, it doesn't matter who you're coming up against, you're going to struggle to turn them over at any point in the game. So, credit to the Blues for doing that, and obviously putting the Chiefs team to the sword, who are, on paper and on the field, is an unbelievable squad as well.
Yeah. I suppose what they had to do, Harry, was do exactly what Glasgow did, and that was just work their way back into the contest. And they just happened to score that try before halftime. And who knows what might have happened. If they didn't score that try before halftime, I sort of suspect the Bulls run away with that. But they did score, and then they scored straight after the break. And that was the momentum that they managed to build for themselves. And the Chiefs just never got that opportunity.
Yeah, I know. And so Willie LaRue is basically the Damian McKenzie for the Bulls, and Willie wasn't there. So the Bulls looked very stagnant when they had to score. They couldn't manufacture it from anything other than a drive, which came within 1 yard of scoring. But if they had LaRue, you think the same thing as well. There's no excuses for the Chiefs. They turned over the Canes. Probably that was an upset, right? So they probably did a little bit better than they thought they would have done.
Yeah, probably in hindsight.
The Blues were a really worthy winner. I think if you look at them, they're a very impressive team. Now you look at the best Australian team, Brumbies, and the best team for New Zealand, the Blues. They play a similar sort of style. Sam, is that just winning footy, or is that just the way the game's going, or do you think it's more just an outlier and just the way it is right now? Because it's not really normal TV ball.
No, I think it's the team that owns the territory and the possession will more than likely end up on top at the end of the game. So how you manage that is going to differ from team to team. Teams, some coaches will encourage guys just to kick possession away in their half after 1 or 2 phases, to then force the other team to either exit themselves or either run back into your half. So if you've got a good accurate kicking game, and you can put the ball in the 5 meter channels and force teams to either kick out or put them into touch or get contestable ball back, you're going to probably have a lot more attacking opportunities in the opposition half, which should lead to points, whether it's tries or penalties. And that pressure is, weirdly enough, teams still struggle with relieving that. As a rugby player, you want to play footy. So even if your game plan is, let's not play any footy in our half, let's get the ball out, you see a little bit of space on the edge or something, you want to get the ball there, so you want to run it out. And then that's the pitfall you kind of face, because you try to get the ball there, you try to play that enterprising footy, but ultimately you might turn the ball over and then you're on the back foot. So that momentum swings quite quickly if you've turning the ball over repeatedly in your half. So the breakdown is probably the biggest part of the game that dictates that. And if you can control and win your breakdowns, prevent the other team from either having jackal attempts or easy access to that ball, then they're going to struggle to launch any attacks when they don't have it. And then you get to play with the ball and run from anywhere, score tries, and just kind of maintain momentum and pressure throughout the game.
It's a simple game when you say it like that, isn't it?
the other complexity overlaid to that is, of course, is fatigue at the end of these matches. I looked at two of the in the league that plays the most matches, top 14, and the guys end up playing 30 matches or something. You looked at some of the losing demi finalists, and they all had too many players over 1,000 minutes. I looked at Stade Francais; only 2 players didn't have 1,000 minutes, whereas Bordeaux, the winning team, had 5 guys over 1,000. Toulouse only had 4 over 1,000 minutes, and La Rochelle 11. And it just starts to show when it really comes down to it. Final 40 of your season, leg drive is gone. People pull up lame. There's hamstring injuries everywhere. Managing minutes. I know you talked about having sort of a hard field sometimes and so forth, but do you actually look at that? Are you trying to rotate and platoon squads?
I look at Leinster, right? So I don't know the stat on how many players they use throughout the year, but I think they probably use too many to the point where you're not going to have enough cohesion or good enough cohesion to get you through to those championship minutes, which is normally the last 20, last 10 of each game. So I think our coaches here have tried to manage the minutes and the rotations, but I've probably been frustrated this year for not, yes, I'm one of the older players in the team and don't need to be playing high minutes, but there's a point where I think I would have liked to have been playing more minutes if it comes to the point where I'm forced to play 60, 70 or 80 minutes, in these big games coming up when I'm just not ready for it. So high minutes is good because you're obviously going to be fit, but at the same time, it's going to take its toll on your body, towards the end of the season. So we don't really face those problems in the MLR just because of, we only play 16 games, and some of the games when you've got new teams coming in, you afford to rotate players and give guys, quality minutes, not just sort of the back end of a 20, 30 point win. You put them on for the last 5 or 10. So that'd probably be more of a mental barrier. I think that players probably had to get over other than a physical. If you've been playing lots of minutes all year, you're probably okay with playing 80 in a final or 60, 70 in a final and being okay with it. And your body's, conditioned to getting through those minutes. So I would probably say it's on the flip side of that. If you haven't played a lot and then you're forced to come on and play big minutes late in the season, that's where you're probably gonna come across soft tissue injuries or just the inexperience to handle situations that might come up in the game because you're not used to it or you haven't failed or tried and failed throughout the season and know how to kind of navigate those parts of the game.
Adrenaline's only going to take you so far.
Yeah.
In that situation. Yeah.
Did you guys watch the Box play Wales as Wales
No.
is now the upcoming Wallabies opposition?
I've seen any, I would have to admit.
I was thinking, Joe Schmidt is the luckiest bugger in the world. I mean, he's going to have opening series against a team that looks like they cannot attack. They had about the same amount of runs, carries in the box, but developed 174 meters from that box, 507. They couldn't get over the gain line. Schmidt is just walking into a job here where it looks like everything is up, And then again, I think, but what if? I'm not going to say it, but what if you get the team that knocked you out of the World Cup 40-6 straight up, and they're really down right now, and players are quitting on Gatlin and all this, and then you walk in and Joe Schmidt, everything is up. Is that how you see it, Sam?
Yeah, it's an exciting time. Joe's a different coach to what we've probably had, for a long while here in Australia. So there's probably, if there's one team you want to come up against for your debut series, at the moment in the way World Rugby is, it's probably Wales. So I think he's definitely lucky in terms of the runway he's got is probably a bit longer than some of the other previous coaches in terms of what he's got to do. For Aussie teams that probably had, probably the most successful super season we've had across the board for a number of years. So, he'd going to be looking at a comprehensive series victory over Wales, but we probably thought the same in the World Cup that it wasn't going to be it was going to be a bit of a cakewalk for us in those pool games, and it turned out not to be. So, I'm excited to see what he brings, and having played in Ireland and speaking to guys that played under him in Leinster and the Ireland setup, he doesn't mess about. So. I expect us to be very competitive, well-drilled, accurate, and play some footy.
Yeah, he's really different from Eddie in this sense. He's well known for having very short, sharp training sessions. So the practices are actually shorter than anyone else's, but they're so scripted. There's not 1 second of wasted time. He wants to build training sessions as if you're in a game. So you really get chewed out when you mess up something. It's like, pressure the whole time. And also Eddie wanted to have people who wanted to sit around and talk for like till midnight or 1 a.m. Joe doesn't like that. Joe wants to get work done and go home. Do you think that will fit better with the Aussie vibe of the players that are in there now? Talking about cultural vibe, like the Schmidt way of being like, I'm really the boss, but I'm also going to respect your time and be efficient, versus Eddie trying to be one of the boys, but also kind of being, kind of a prick sometimes.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I think if you can control the minutes between the white lines and make it as meaningful and as effective as you can, then you're only going to be a good team at the back end of it. So, rugby is an unbelievable career, and we'll always tell you they're so fortunate to play this as a job and do it as a job. So, training is the time to perfect, to perfect the things that you're going to do on the weekend, right? So, whether that's sort of the American sports model that Joe's kind of implementing there, speaking to guys that I know that work in the NFL, everything's down to the second in terms of the time that these boys get to. The coaches get hands on these players, so he can maximize that time and not, have that garbage where boys are running around and not really doing anything on the field, but are fatiguing themselves just by being out there. Then you're gonna have a better body come Saturday, 3 o'clock to execute your game plan. So whether that means boys have got more spare time to do what they choose, I think it's probably adds more value to the time that they get to spend with ball in hand on the field. So an interesting one, and I think that's probably where coaches these days are starting to invest time and money, is to, okay, how can we do something differently that's going to maximize our output on the weekends. So if that's giving boys more free time to do things that help them relax and take their mind off the game, or if it's coaches that probably prefer to control it a lot more and go, no, we need to be hands-on at all times during the week ahead of the game, just so I know as a coach that you've done everything you can. It's an interesting one. So we'll see how it pans out. I think as a player, you want. No, you go.
Oh no, I was just going to say it's going to be fascinating to see the contrast of styles from one year to the next, because it's going to be black and white. I don't think it's going to be much grey, much overlap. It's going to be very, very different. And
he also picks and sticks. So CJ Stander was really controversial. Rob Carney, they always wouldn't drop him, and he kept him for 60 tests. Joe kind of goes, I see something in this guy, and I want to stick with him because it's a relationship. He's like, I want to do 15 tests with this guy, and we'll see what I can do with him, as opposed to Eddie going, Carter, no, Ben, no, this, no, that.
You got
Kellaway
2 weeks.
Speaking of Kellaway, so we are the coaches of the 89ers, the mythical teams, Sam, and you are being, we're selecting you. We're wanting you to play for us. But we'll give you the choice. Do we shift Kellaway to the wing and make you the fullback, or do you want to come in the wing? Because I know I've seen you play wing recently, and then make Kellaway play fullback. All right, it's about tackling. I don't know how much workload you want, chasing kicks and stuff.
It's funny. The older you get, the closer you get to the scrum, and somehow I've managed to make my way further from the set piece. So
that sounds smart to me.
I don't want to be on the wing because I definitely don't have the gas to finish tries that Kells could probably do. So no, I'll happily sit at the back and tell him that I'm not there and he's got to get last. So
fullback, I'll making a cappuccino in the back. Yeah,
that's fair.
It,
No, that's fair.
That's me.
That's fair, mate. It's been fantastic to have a chat. I'm glad we sort of reconnected earlier in the year. It's been a few years since we've had a few chats, but I've really enjoyed this. I hope the rest of your series and your season with the Seawolves goes well, and we'll certainly be keeping an eye on things from afar. Thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. No, it's really good, and I think we probably have my mum to thank above anyone else. She's
I think we do.
And
I was going to say your mum's been on before you have.
Yeah, she has. She's unbelievable. So
I'll be up there in Seattle soon. I'm going to look into one of your games and say hi.
Awesome. Well, I'll try and find a good coffee spot to take you out again, mate. It's always good fun.
This is the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast. Brett McKay and Harry Jones. How good, mate, to have the Major League Rugby perspective firsthand from Sam Windsor. That was such a good chat. I really enjoyed that.
Sam is the dude, man. Listen, he's a fine fellow. Really good to talk with him when I met him. I know you know him as well. But I just like the idea of learning what that life looks like. Rugby right now is like, I know when you're fighting with league in Australia, it's all about this, how global it is, but it really is. Like, you think about the permutations of a Seattle locker room and all the people in there from all the places, and wetting it together, and they have such a good time. And really, I know what he meant when he said Mac Mason was the glue, because he really walks in and kind of like makes everyone pay attention. He's just that kind of kid,
Yeah, right. And that's cool. That's good. And it's like, I'm really glad someone who was always going to be a quality player has managed to find an existence somewhere, because
build a career.
Yeah, absolutely. It was it's really good to see. We'll head around the grounds as we do again each week, touch on the major points from the weekend around the world. We've sort of covered off the Super Rugby Pacific final, where the Blues touched up the Chiefs pretty 41-10 at Eden Park. In Auckland, they led 20-3 at halftime, and the second half was just as dominant. So that was that. The Irk final was just an incredible game. The Bulls 16 lost to Glasgow 21 in the end at Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria. The Bulls were up 13-7 at halftime, and as we said before, the way that Glasgow were able to get back in that contest and then build the momentum and carry on, and then defend like they have never defended before in the last 5 minutes to hold the Bulls out. It was just an incredible win. It really was.
No, it was really beautiful rugby, and I would never want to take away from Glasgow, because it's important to laud, the Ferguson, Dempsey. Dempsey was immense in that match. He just kept carrying into brick walls. And sometimes
Tuipulotu was unbelievable.
Yeah. Sometimes to keep a team like the Bulls out, number one attack in the Irk and really good at scoring, you just have to hold the ball. And to do that, someone like Jack Dempsey has to run into impossible walls. I saw him do a 3-carry set where I'm just like, you really should be just done at this point for the whole game. And he kept going. So takeaways for me is, sometimes a player is most valuable when he's not playing, and you see the merits of him. So, Spiders LaRue, take a bow. But the other thing is, the Bulls had gone into this very weird habit of trying to strip the ball. Stripping the ball is great when it comes off, but it is a 1 in 30 kind of eventuality. And so they were getting so many extra meters from just these Bulls trying to do the miracle rips. And in the end, it allowed Glasgow to get over the gain line at will. And then they started to keep doing it, like they started trying to do it like almost like an obsession. So I don't know what that was, but Jake should focus on that more than the ref.
More than refereeing conspiracy theories. Yeah, and you're right. Even on the few occasions where they were able to rip it free, the number of times it spilt loose into the hands of another Warriors player anyway. So it didn't really make a lot of difference, did it? So
just make the tackle.
And you're right about Glasgow holding the ball. They just looked like the team that was more likely to score points. If Hussein had a decent night, I think, but if he wasn't kicking, he wasn't really doing a lot else.
Yeah, there's not excuses either. But Hussein literally had a guy doing an HIA with him, and he did it 4 different times, giving different fingers. He was not. He was failing that.
And that's a fair.
And I think from that point on, he was really kind of out of it.
Yeah. What has that done to the Harry Index this week? And noting that the top 14 semi-finals saw Toulouse beat La Rochelle pretty well in the end, 39-23. Stade Francais lost to Bordeaux 22-20. That was a 86-minute missed conversion that would have leveled the scores and sent it in overtime.
I don't think you want your kicker to be named Seconds. I think about Seconds. It sounds like you're going to miss it.
It's too close to seconds, which is too close to missing, isn't it? Yes.
Actually, the big takeaway from that match was the diameter, radius, and exact height of the poles, because he hit the post 3 times. When you hit the post 3 times, it's not your day. But no, the Harry Index, which is taken way too seriously by the Blues, and also debated by people having actual debates with me about an algorithm. Like, do you think I have an algorithm? Do I look like a guy who's an algorithm?
Yeah, I do love that you're holding fast, making people think that there's some science behind this.
And I go, the index disagrees. I don't even like to make it me, So number 1, Toulouse with a rebuttable presumption because of Champions Cup and the incredible depth of top 14. So they hold on, but they will face number 4, Bordeaux. So Toulouse, Bordeaux are the only active player teams now. Toulouse 1, 2 Blues, 3 Glasgow making a jump up, 4 Bordeaux, 5 Bulls who slipped down, 6 Leinster, disappointing season really, 7 the Saints. holding the flag for the premiership. 8 Munster also dropped, and then 9 and 10 is Stade Francais and La Rochelle just flipping places.
Yeah.
I think at this point, it's just up in the top 4 now. If
that's
Toulouse
going
were to lose badly, I think maybe you look at the Blues or Bordeaux looking at number 1. But Bordeaux had quite a few losses in the top 14 of the league.
Yeah.
So.
I still think the Chiefs should be head of at least one of those 2 French teams at 9 and 10. But that's
I just don't.
But
I'm
really not going to debate a fictional ranking system with you.
I don't like the 5 losses. The index does not.
No, and I do. Yes, I do get that, and I do sort of understand when you say the index disagrees.
Plus, the index would have given the Chiefs back in if they had done well. I mean, even a narrow loss, I think the Chiefs would have been in. The problem is that 5-1 try thing.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. It was round 17 of Major League Rugby. Nola Gold beat New England 27-17, which draws them level on 10 wins. They trail by 2 points against Free Jacks in East. Chicago secured their maiden playoff berth with their win over Anthony's RC. San Diego had the big boil over beating the goddamn Houston Sabercats on Sunday. That's just the second loss for Houston all year, which
you can feel the hatred Sam has for the Houston Sabercats. You just felt it, isn't it? Like, I think he wanted to say "God damn" as well.
I'm sure he will going forward. That's just the way he'll refer to them. The sort of standout games for the last round this weekend to me is probably Old Glory and Nola Gold in Maryland. That has implications in the East playoffs potentially, and then obviously San Diego v Seattle in San Diego. That's third v second in West. So that'll be a ripping game this weekend.
Pacifica Classica.
Yeah, absolutely. International rugby is underway. Japan 17 were rather thumped by England 52 in Tokyo. Eddie Jones' next chapter has started the same way that his previous one did.
Samashu Grabu did not go well.
Yeah, they weren't great. Japan,
they looked disinterested on the highlights I watched. I didn't watch the whole. I have to confess, didn't watch the test, but the highlights looked shockingly disinterested.
I watched about the first half an hour live actually before I switched to the Super Rugby final, and they were down by maybe it was 17-0 maybe at that point, and I thought, oh, this is looking ugly already. So
Marcus was just waltzing through.
Yeah, they all were in the end. I mean, Ben Earls had a run at 12 at some point.
Yes, I saw that. Charlie Morgan ripped that up and wrapped it up for us in the Telegraph as really good analysis. So I'm going with Charlie in that Borthwick is trying new things. Everyone said Borthwick was boring. I think he had to be
really
going to
run. Is he really going to run Ben Earls at 12?
That's been the thing. People have been talking about that for a while in England.
I know it's been a talking point.
He's actually comfortable in space, so I don't know. He's not.
Yeah, maybe.
Biggest eight, but that just shows how incredible 8s can be.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you nearly got away with that. You really nearly got away with that.
I mean,
Charlie
nines can play anywhere. If they would just had some more size, they could play prop. They got the attitude.
Yeah, as they lose the ability to bend and feed a scrum, that's when they start moving forward. Charlie Ewell's copped red and has already been suspended for 2 games for that pretty ordinary clean out on Michael Leach, I've got to say. So he'll miss both All Blacks tests and has been replaced already in the England squad. South Africa 41 beat Wales 13 pretty comfortably at Twickenham. Rassie got the band back.
Yeah, so Rassie was very happy. He was having a really good bromance with Tony Brown. Then he turned around and had a bromance with Jerry Flattery, whatever his name is. Yeah. So you bring in the Kiwi and the Aussie and the Irish guy in. There was the wrinkles in attack were different. Tony Brown's handiwork was on it. It wasn't meshed quite right. It was really about the 4 newbies that were brought in, and 3 of them were lights out, incredible. Or 2 were, and then 1 was got better, and then 1 was terrible. One of the worst debuts I've ever seen. So Jordan Hendrickse, the brothers Hendrickse, Hendrickse is that 9,
which we didn't get that.
Jordan came on, and he was just terrible. I mean, I've never seen someone just not up to test rugby. He was trying miracle offloads. He was missing easy kicks. He was rattled, you could tell. So that was important. It's as important to see who's not ready for test rugby in a game you're going to win anyway, as it is to find one. So then Edville van der Merwe was just one of these scrum-capped, swivel-hipped, double back Safa wings that they keep finding, and there's no reason for the scrum cap, but they have it on, and it gives them mystical powers.
Yeah.
And I put a thing on Twitter and had a poll, but I think the best choice of what that back should be called, a new position, is the lacquer back. From now on, that's what they shall be called. So Cheslin Colby, Courtney Aronsa, and now Edward van der Merwe. Weirdly strong for their size, strangely aerial, just weird animals. And they don't, like, you've seen Shane Williams and maybe Darcy Graham, but most teams don't have this kind of wing.
They have, we have sort of, blindside wingers and kind of open side wingers. Could there be tight head wingers?
Yeah, maybe. And the other guy who played really well was Fassi, Afalala Fassi. He had a card for doing
at fullback.
For doing the knee up thing when he caught it, which you'll have to cut out. Although I'd never think that someone catching the ball and putting the knee out is really trying to do anything other than not die when they land.
Yeah.
But he became Freddie Stewart for the whole second half. He just caught everything.
Yeah, right.
He's got incredible vertical leap. I mean, he's tall anyway, but he can jump over players. And then the other one was, I think Sasha came on, Feinberg. He nailed the kick from 55 meters. He looks like the guy they really do need to take over from Pollard.
Okay. Yeah, cool. All right. So I haven't seen any of that, so I haven't even really had a chance to see what Wales will or won't offer. So I might. I think I can find
for Australian fans to watch.
I'll do that.
Try and do a little bit because Wales looks like really hard on the ball. It was 14-13 at Oranges. That was a little bit because of Jordan Hendrickson, but still, the point is they still know how to lure you into an alley fight. So that's what the Bogies will have to stay away from.
That might be some off weekend viewing this weekend coming. The Barbarians beat Fiji 45-32 to round out the doubleheader at Twickers. There was some squads named. Joe Schmidt named his first Wallaby squad for the Wales and Georgia tests on Friday last week. Scott Robertson named his first All Blacks test for the England and Fiji tests on Monday. Razor named Scott Barrett captain. Joe Schmidt did not name a Wallabies captain. He's going to take some time over these next few weeks and work out who he picks for the first test and name a captain from there, which I kind of don't mind the idea. It's kind of old school.
Yeah, nothing really surprised me. I don't know if it did you in those squads except for the omission of Hoskins Satutu.
I was a little bit surprised Stephen Perifetta was picked, I must admit. I thought Sean Stevenson might have still snuck in there, but that's neither here nor there, I think.
That's two coaches in a row that have not seen the merits of Sean Stevenson very much. So maybe they know something we don't know.
Maybe it's me.
But I mean, Hoskins Satutu probably is thinking at 25 years old, what do I have to do? He probably was one up for the Super Rugby Player of the Year kind of guy. So I don't know. He qualifies for England in 1 year, and he could play for Fiji. Yeah,
I did notice Simon Rabalui's
rather
unsubtle. Come play with us. It was very subtle, wasn't it? So,
timed, Simon.
We'll see, and there'll be no doubt there'll be plenty to talk about that next week. And I say next week because it is a week off for Games of the Week this week, but we will be back with our end of week show next week to get ready for the first of the July test. So that is another reason for you to like, follow, subscribe. Don't miss that one next week when we do come back. Excuse me. We'll finish off with the biggest headlines of the last 7 days, mate, and we start with a bit of sad news, unfortunately. Ex-Highlanders back Connor Garden-Bachop died of a medical episode Monday night last week. Only 25 years of age, twin daughters, was heading to Japan as well. So it's so sad, that news. And thoughts with friends, family, supporters of his in New Zealand as well. It's still just horrible news.
Well, I got no words for that.
Yeah, no, it wasn't great at all. Andrew Kellaway last week re-signed with Rugby Australia and will switch to the New South Wales Waratahs for 2025 and 26. Hence the discussion last week about moving house when we spoke to him.
The secret.
He did. We did keep the secret, although he did let it slip that he drove up from Melbourne. So I was waiting for someone to say, What do you mean he drove up from Melbourne? Kind of was an unkept secret, that one. Leicester Tigers and Dan McKellar mutually parted ways.
Talk to me about
Sunday.
this. This is a story right up your alley. What's going on?
Yeah, barely a week after they confirmed his coaching team, which included bringing Peter Hewitt, ex-Brumbies assistant coach from Japan, to be his attack coach. He didn't have an attack coach, didn't have an S&C lead. That was all named. Those major holes were filled for this new campaign. Preseason barely a week away. Suddenly they become misaligned somewhere. This feels very knee-jerky to me.
Let's speculate in some way. So the Telegraph reports that there was a presentation to the board that didn't go very well. Dan's plan was a longer term. You got Cheika in the wings, and Cheika's known for saying, I'll come in and, seven games later, we're going to be the best. They lost the same amount that the Quins did. It wasn't like this. It was a weird year in the Premiership because all the teams were stacked together in one little pond.
Yeah. The difference, we've talked about it all year, the difference between 6th and 9th was half a win.
Yeah.
So
it was all bonus points. If you took the bonus points out, literally it was all 9 and 10 wins. Yeah.
No, it feels very knee-jerky. I can't. As soon as I heard Cheika's name mentioned, I thought, I just wonder if they've been seduced by the idea of a quick fix.
Yeah, man.
And the same sort of conversations are being had around the Waratahs as well. And now, so obviously, as soon as the news about Dan McKellar becoming free agent becomes available, is he going to coach the Waratahs? And that is it's a fair question. It's a fair question. They need to nail down their general manager first of all, which hasn't been filled all year. So Darren Coleman was trying to do the GM role and be the head coach.
Right.
That evidently has come down to Simon Rawalui or Nick Stiles, and both would be really good appointments, I think.
I think it should be Simon, because then we could say that his presence on our pod created that scenario.
Sure, yeah. Funnily enough, I think we could get Nick Stiles on and we'd land him a job pretty quickly too. The thing I wonder about Nick Stiles taking that job is actually the same question that I have about Dan McKellar taking the coaching job. Could Nick Stiles stomach Rugby Australia at the moment, given the Melbourne Rebels situation? And could a couple of very proud Queenslanders stomach the idea of leading New South Wales out of the rugby swamp?
This thing
I don't know about that.
Simon's, local. He's got that good turnaround energy. He's well liked. I think
he'd be very good. That said, I have Nick Stiles would be excellent. He might be exactly what the Waratahs needs.
I'm going to keep pushing Simon. Simon will also improve the food at the Alliance Stadium, and there would be free sauce for everyone.
There would be no $3 sauce, that's for sure. So yeah, look, it's interesting to see how it plays out. I feel for Dan. I'm sorry to hear it. I don't know. It's just
so much of this thing in coaching now, as it becomes more and more professional sport, is salesmanship, selling yourself to the stakeholders, befriending and getting alliances on the board. It's not just about what's going on the pitch.
And maybe that's never more obvious than when you're coaching in the Premiership, where it's all benefactors and mates on the board, and we haven't got time for 3-year builds. We need success next year, and we need to make sure we keep our spot in Europe. So Anyway, a final thought for the week.
Oh, I just think, the teams that won the playoffs were the teams that knew who they were, and they committed to who they were. And I think there's a lesson in life for that. Stop trying to twist and turn and do something other than what you are. Get good at something and just do it. It's brilliant.
You do you, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
And on that note, that's episode 20 of the 8-9 combo done. Check the show notes for the links to the 8-9 combo on Twitter and YouTube, where you'll find video versions of the pod every week. Harry and I remain on the socials in our usual places, at Harry Baldy Jones, at BMC Sport. You'll find links to our socials, and also for Harry's written work on the Roar, my weekly Australian column on Rugby Pass. They're all in the show notes as well. So head there and get all of that info. This is the 8-9 combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones, and we'll be back in your ears next week.
Come play with us.
Yes, do that.